All right, guys, we're now on, where am I? Unit 5. So we're almost done with all these videos, but this is our factoring unit. We did it pretty recently, but there's a lot of things to think of here. Add whatever you have room for on your note sheet, okay? I wanted to point out number 2. The first thing you're going to want to do, remember when it's written squared, that means it's the parentheses 2 different times. And I want to remind you what FOIL stands for. First, this times this, 2x times 2x is 4x squared. The O stands for outside, so this times this. 2x times 5 is positive 10x. The I stands for inside, so 5 times 2x, so plus another 10x. They're not always the same number, but in this case they are. 2x times 5 and 5 times 2x. Those are both 10x. The L stands for last, so the last number in each parentheses. The 5 and the 5 get multiplied together, which makes 25. And then look, these are like terms. 10x plus 10x makes positive 20x. You still have 25, and you still have 4x squared. Okay, so this is the way that we're going to write our final answer when it asks you to multiply or expand. Multiply, that's what that means. So what you're going to do is you're going to FOIL for all of these problems, and then just check your answer on the answer key, okay? On the back page is a little bit harder, and I just want to remind you that if you think you don't know what to do, check to see if there's a GCF. So this very first one, I know what you're thinking about right away is you're going to try to like square root. But I don't think we can square root 32. We can't square root 20. That's not always what you do when you see two terms. 1, 2. But check for a GCF, because a lot of you on the test or the quiz came up and said, I don't know how to do this one. And I said, check for a GCF. And then you went, oh, okay. That I think is what we're going to want to do. So what can you divide 32 and 20 by? I know you're thinking 2 because they're even, but I think there's a bigger number. I think you can actually divide both of those numbers by 4. So just be careful about that. Make sure you pick the biggest number. X to the 5th and x to the 3rd. The smaller of those is x to the 3rd. So that's going to be in our GCF. Move this over a little bit. Now let's figure out what's left over. 32 divided by 4 is 8. You started with 5 x's. You got rid of 3 of them, which means there are 2 left. Keep the minus sign in the middle. 20 divided by 4 is 5. And there were 3 x's, and you got rid of all 3 of them, so there are no x's left. That is actually how you fully factor number 1. Number 3 is different. When you have 3 things, 1, 2, 3, that's when we do this. Okay, and the coefficient in front of the x squared is just a 1. There's a 1 here. You don't have to put it if you don't want to. But 1 times 3 is 3, which goes on the top, and this number, negative 4, goes in the bottom. You have to think to yourself, what times what is 3? Remember, it's multiply to 3 and add up to negative 4. Only factors of 3 are 3 and 1, but we got to think about negatives. Okay, so they have to add up to negative 4. 3 minus 1 is 2. Negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. Oh, what if they're both negative? Negative times negative is positive. That works. Negative 3 minus 1 is negative 4. Great. Remember what we do now. We don't write this negative 4x. We split it into negative 3x and negative 1x. And we keep the positive 3 at the end. And we keep the x squared at the beginning. From there, you do your parentheses, parentheses. So what can I take out of this group? Just an x, left with x minus 3. What can I take out of this group? When it starts with a minus, you're going to take out a minus, and when there's nothing to take out, you put a 1 there. That means the negative 1 came out, the x stays in. Because you took out a negative sign from this whole group, this is going to change to minus. And 3 divided by 1 is 3. Remember, these match. That's good. That's the first part of your answer. The other part of your answer is x minus 1. And when it just asks you to factor, notice how there's no equals 0 up here. That's not in there. So we're not equaling these to 0 or solving. This is our final answer. Take a look at your answer choices before you do extra steps. Okay, number 8. Maybe you're like, whoa, do I multiply 2 by 102? Well, let's stop first because I think this one also has a GCF. That will make your life way easier, okay? What can you divide 2, 40, and 102 by? You can take out a 2. This is x to the third, this is x squared, this is x. The smaller of all of those is just x. Now let's figure out what's left. Got rid of the 2, got rid of one of the x's. That means there's 2 left. Keep the minus. Got rid of, divided by 2. 40 divided by 2 is 20. There were 2 x's. You pulled out 1. There's 1 left. Keep the plus. 102 divided by 2 is 51. And x got rid of. No x's left. Now let's see if I can factor 51 and negative 20. Okay, the 1 that's in front of this x squared gets multiplied by 51, which puts here. The negative 20 is this. What times what is 51? Did you know it's 17 times 3? Wow, both of those are negative. What we're going to do here, just to save time, I'm going to go through the process I did on this problem with the grouping. Okay, so we split the middle term and we do the grouping and we write our answer like this. I'm going to get it factored for you just to save time, but it ends up being x minus 17 and x minus 3. This is fully factored, but you probably couldn't have gotten here if you forgot to take out this GCF, and that GCF must stay in your answer. So check your multiple choice answer choices and make sure you have a GCF in front if there's a GCF for any of these problems. Last one like this that I'm going to take a look at is I'm going to take the 3 and multiply by the negative 5. Remember, that is a new step that whenever this number is not a 1, it has to be multiplied by this to go here. And then the negative 2 still stays at the bottom. What times what is 15? 5 and 3. If they're going to add up to negative 2, I think the 5 has to be negative. So I'm going to split this middle. And I'm going to write minus 5x and positive 3x. Keep the minus 5 at the end. Keep the 3x squared at the beginning. Now let's figure out what we can take out, parentheses, parentheses. Between 3 and 5, there's no number that you can divide both of those by evenly. But this is x squared and this is x, so I think I can take out an x. In this case, there is nothing that I can divide 3 and 5 by, and this has an x and this one doesn't. So remember, when there's nothing to do, you have to put that plus 1. And we still have 3x minus 5, because dividing by 1 doesn't do anything. These match. That's the first part of your answer. The other part is the x plus 1. Okay, there's your final answer for that one. So what I would suggest doing for all of these that have 3, this one, this one, this one, do what we did here and do the x and do your practicing, because you can get pretty fast at it as long as you do some practice, okay? There's 4 more problems on this side that I wanted to take a look at. Here we go with number 14. I see 2 things again, and yes, the very first thing I always think of when I see problems that look like this is I try and square root, and yes, this is one of the ones we're going to do that with, because 9 square roots and 4 square roots. There's no GCF, there's nothing I can divide both of these numbers by, but remember, when you have one of these squares, and it's a difference of squares, which, don't let me get ahead of myself, but you're going to be thinking of doing the same thing here, but because of this, we can't do it. There will definitely be one on every test or quiz that I've ever seen. So this one you cannot factor because it's a plus. But for number 14 you can, because it's a minus. It's called a difference of squares. And remember how you write your answer. We're supposed to have 2 parentheses. One of them's minus and one of them's plus. And that's always the way we're going to do it when this is a 2. When it's a difference of squares. One of your parentheses is minus, one of them is plus. Square root 9x squared, you get 3x. The square root of 9 is 3, and keep the x with it, please. And then when you square root the 4, you get 2. Do I have to equal this to 0 and solve it? No, because there's not an equal sign in the problem. This is our final answer. This one is prime. You can't factor it because of the plus sign. Maybe put that on your note sheet. How about this one? Okay, I'm thinking again, square root. This is a minus, so I can do it. That's great. 25 square roots. Did you know 121 square roots? It's actually 11. Check your calculator. So I'm going to write my two answers. One of them is minus, one of them is plus. When you square root 25, you get 5, and make sure you keep the x with it. When you square root 121, you get 11, and make sure you keep the y with it. That's it. Okay, just because there's an extra letter in there, you can still do the exact same thing. Last one. Remember the difference between having a 2 and having a 3. We should absolutely put one of these on our note sheet, because when you do a 2, it's very simple and very quick. When you do a 3, there's a lot more things you have to think of. So make sure, like, make a note to yourself that this is different. This is one of these SOAP problems. So the first thing that we have to do for these SOAP problems, which I know you probably forgot all about, is we have to uncube the numbers. Do you know what times what times what 3 times is 27? 27 is 3 times 3 times 3. Did you know that? You might have to figure that out in your calculator and play around a little bit. 8, you might be thinking 4, but 4 times 4 times 4 is not 8. You have to uncube the numbers. Okay? When you do 8, it turns into 2 times 2 times 2. When you do 27, it's 3, but make sure you keep the x with it. So I'm going to write 3x times 3x times 3x. Okay, so first, uncube the numbers. Second, what does SOAP stand for again? I forget. We have a little parentheses and we have a big one, which is different from this problem that we did up here. Remember, we had 1 minus, 1 plus, and they were both little. Here we have a little one and a big one. And what does SOAP stand for? So you might want to write this down, but the S stands for the same sign as this, so plus. It could also have a minus here, and the same sign would go here. So whatever sign this is goes here. That's what the S stands for, same. The O stands for opposite. So the opposite sign of this goes next. And the AP stands for always positive, no matter what. That's what goes last. Same sign as this one goes here. Opposite sign as this one goes here. Always positive, no matter what, goes here. And now in the little parentheses are all of these uncubed numbers. So the 3x and the 2, like the numbers that these uncubed into. So I'm going to put 3x and 2. Okay. Last, what we're going to do is we're going to buddy these up. 3x times 3x is 9x squared. 3x times 2 is 6x. And 2 times 2 is 4. That is your crash course on factoring. Let's practice some more and check some answers.